Chapter 10, Part 3 of the Legends of the Jews, Volume 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. The Legends of the Jews, Volume 4, by Louis Ginsberg. Nebuchadnezzar. The suffering to which Jeremiah was exposed was finally ended by the capture of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar. This Babylonian king was a son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. His first contact with the Jews happened in the time of his father-in-law Sennacherib, whom he accompanied on his campaign against Hezekiah. The destruction of the Assyrian army before the walls of Jerusalem, the great catastrophe from which only Nebuchadnezzar and 4 others escaped with their life, inspired him with fear of God. Later, in his capacity as secretary to the Babylonian king Merodach-baladan, it was he who called his master's notice to the mention of the Jewish king's name before the name of God. "Thou callest him the great God, yet thou dost name him after the king," he said. Nebuchadnezzar himself hastened after the messenger to bring back the letter and have it changed. He had advanced scarce 3 steps when he was restrained by the angel Gabriel, for even the few paces he had walked for the glory of God earned him his great power over Israel. A further step would have extended his ability to inflict harm immeasurably. For 18 years daily a heavenly voice resounded in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar, saying, "O thou wicked slave, go and destroy the house of thy Lord, for his children hearken not unto him." But Nebuchadnezzar was beset with fears lest God prepare a fate for him similar to that of his ancestor Sennacherib. He practiced belomancy and consulted other auguries to assure himself that his being against Jerusalem would result favorably. When he shook up the arrows and questioned whether he was to go to Rome or Alexandria, not one arrow sprang up, but when he questioned about Jerusalem, one sprang up. He sowed seeds and set out plants. For Rome or Alexandria, nothing came up. For Jerusalem, everything sprouted and grew. He lighted candles and lanterns. For Rome or Alexandria they refused to burn, for Jerusalem they shed their light. He floated vessels on the Euphrates. For Rome or Alexandria they did not move, for Jerusalem they swam. Still the fears of Nebuchadnezzar were not allayed. His determination to attack the holy city ripened only after God himself had shown him how he had bound the hands of the archangel Michael, the patron of the Jews, behind his back in order to render him powerless to bring to his wards. So the campaign against Jerusalem was undertaken. Nebuchadnezzar, a beast. Nebuchadnezzar, the ruler of the whole world, to whom even the wild animals paid obedience, his pet was a lion with a snake coiled about its neck, did not escape punishment for his sins. He was chastised as none before him. He whom fear of God had at first held back from a war against Jerusalem, and who had to be dragged forcibly as he sat on his horse to the Holy of Holies by the archangel Michael, he later became so arrogant that he thought himself a god, and cherished the plan of enveloping himself in a cloud so that he might live apart from men. A heavenly voice resounded, "O thou wicked man, son of a wicked man, and descendant of Nimrod the wicked, who incited the world to rebel against God. Behold, the days of the years of a man are 60 years and 10, or perhaps by reason of strength 80 years. It takes 500 years to traverse the distance of the earth from the first heaven, and as long a time to penetrate from the bottom to the top of the first heaven, and not less are the distances from one of the 7 heavens to the next. How then canst thou speak of ascending like unto the Most High above the heights of the clouds?" For this transgression of deeming himself more than a man, he was punished by being made to live for some time as a beast among beasts, treated by them as though he were one of them. For 40 days he led this life. As far down as his navel he had the appearance of an ox, and the lower part of his body resembled that of a lion. Like an ox he ate grass, and like a lion he attacked a curious crowd. But Daniel spent his time in prayer, entreating that the 7 years of this brutish life allotted to Nebuchadnezzar might be reduced to 7 months. His prayer was granted. At the end of 40 days Reason returned to the king. The next 40 days he passed in weeping bitterly over his sins, and in the interval that remained to complete the 7 months, he again lived the life of a beast. Hiram, the king of Tyre, was a contemporary of Nebuchadnezzar, and in many respects resembled him. He too esteemed himself a god, and sought to make men believe in his divinity by the artificial heavens he fashioned for himself. In the sea he erected 4 iron pillars, on which he built up 7 heavens, each 500 ells larger than the one below. The first was a plate of glass of 500 square ells, and the second a plate of iron of 1,000 square ells. The third of lead, and separated from the second by canals, contained huge round boulders which produced the sound of thunder on the iron. The 4th heaven was of brass, the 5th of copper, the 6th of silver, and the 7th of gold, all separated from each other by canals. In the 7th, 3,500 ells in extent, he had diamonds and pearls, which he manipulated so as to produce the effect of flashes and sheets of lightning, while the stones below imitated the growling of the thunder. As Hiram was thus floating above the earth in his vain imagination, deeming himself superior to the rest of men, he suddenly perceived the prophet Ezekiel next to himself. He had been waved thither by a wind. Frightened and amazed, Hiram asked the prophet how he had risen to his heights. The answer was, "God brought me here, and he bade me ask thee why thou art so proud, thou born of woman." The king of Tyre replied defiantly, "I am not one born of woman. I live forever, and as God resides on the sea, so my abode is on the sea, and as he inhabits 7 heavens, so do I. See how many kings I have survived, 21 of the house of David, and as many of the kingdom of the 10 tribes, and no less than 50 prophets and 10 high priests have I buried." Thereupon God said, "I will destroy my house, that henceforth Hiram may have no reason for self-glorification, because all his pride comes only from the circumstance that he furnished the cedar trees for the building of the temple." The end of this proud king was that he was conquered by Nebuchadnezzar, deprived of his throne, and made to suffer a cruel death. Though the Babylonian king was the stepson of Hiram, he had no mercy with him. Daily he cut off a bit of the flesh of his body and forced the Tyrian king to eat it, until he finally perished. Hiram's palace was swallowed by the earth, and in the bowels of the earth it will remain until it shall emerge in the future world as the habitation of the pious.